Assistantships are the most common type of funding that students all over the world take advantage of in order to fund their master's or PhD in the United States. So in this video, I am going to talk about assistantships, the types of assistantships, where you can find assistantships, and also I'm going to talk about how to get assistantships. Hello guys, welcome to this video. I am Babajide Ojo. Before I move on, I just want to encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy any of the content that I put up on this channel to assist you in your journey towards a master's or PhD in the United States. So let's get right into it. Assistantships are just like it sounds, a form of funding where you assist in doing some kind of work, and in return you get a monthly stipend, tuition waivers, which could be between 70 to 100% in some cases, and also in most cases that comes with health insurance as well. And like I said earlier, this is the most common form of funding that students, both those in the United States and also international students, can take advantage of to fund their graduate degrees in the United States. So the first type of assistantship that I'm going to talk about is the research assistantship. Now, the research assistantship is the most common form of assistantship that is available in most US universities to fund a graduate degree. And how that works is that most professors in US colleges and universities, if they have a research position, that means if they are supposed to do research, so what they have to do is get external grants from agencies such as the National Institute of Health or the National Science Foundation. And when those grants are approved for a particular project, now they have to get that project done in order to fulfill the agreement with those external agencies. Now, that is where you come in, because frankly, professors don't have a lot of time to do these things themselves, so they need the help of students to get the research done. So what happens is that the professor, after interviewing some students, will employ the student to essentially conduct the research. If you have to do some trainings, then that will be made available to that particular student. And after getting the required training, you start working and learning on the project as you complete your courses for your master's or PhD. In most cases, this research that you will be conducting with the professor will become a key part of your master's thesis or your PhD dissertation. In other words, you are pretty much getting paid to complete your graduate studies, which I think is pretty cool, because apart from doing the research and completing your degree, you are still getting all these benefits, which I think is pretty cool. So it is a win-win relationship between the students and the professor, because you get the work done for the professor essentially, and the professor in most cases becomes your advisor or your supervisor for your graduate research. And like I said earlier, this is the most common form of funding, and I'll get to how you can get this type of funding in a minute. Now, teaching assistantships are the second most common type of funding available for your master's or PhD in the United States. And again, just like it sounds, what you have to do is, if you get this type of position, you would have to teach or assist a professor in teaching certain classes, mostly undergraduate classes, and in return you still get all these benefits. Your teaching duties could include, leading laboratory sessions or discussion sections for some particular class, and also it could just be grading and managing the class for a particular professor. Some more experienced folks, such as PhD students, might be given the opportunity to, be the instructor of record for a particular class. That means that you'll be the sole, like, professor or instructor for that particular class. But this is usually reserved for PhD students in most cases. The downside to that, in my opinion, is that teaching assistantship might, get in your way of research, because it's sometimes a little time consuming, because you have to, prepare for classes, grade, and this kind of takes time away from your research, which you would still have to do eventually. So that's just the negative about teaching assistantship. But if that's the only thing available and you need funding, what else can you do than to take up that particular position? However, I must mention that for me, during my 4-year stint as a teaching assistant, I enjoyed every bit of it, because I eventually made lasting connections with some wonderful students that I still connect with still today. So if you have the opportunity, especially if you're a PhD student and you think that teaching or presentation would be part of your future career, I would say you should seek opportunities for teaching, even if you do not start with a teaching assistantship. Sometime during your program, you should seek opportunities for a teaching assistantship position, because frankly, it looks good on your CV if you would be in academia, or if your future job will involve, presentations at some point. So look out for that as you prepare or as you complete your degree. Now, the last type of assistantship that can be available for your master's or PhD in the United States is what we call administrative assistantship. Now, this is the least common type of assistantship available in the United States on any university. And how this works is that if you get this type of opportunity, you would just have to serve some clerical roles in, offices, or in the library, or in computer or IT departments. So that may or may not be directly related to your course of study, but it will still give you some of these benefits if it is actually an assistantship position, because there are a lot of positions in these offices that I mentioned earlier that are not assistantship positions and are just per hour, roles. So you'll be paid per hour, but if it's an actual assistantship position, you get all the benefits of having an assistantship. But if you are paid per hour, then you do not get those benefits, and frankly, the amount of money you would make in a per hour job might not be enough to pay for all your tuition and fees for your master's or PhD. So if you're looking for this kind of assistantship, what you should look out for is the word assistant. Make sure it's an assistantship position, because that is what we give you the tuition waiver and all the benefits that would make your life easy during your master's or PhD. Personally, my advice is to shoot for research or teaching assistantships, but if those are not available, then this kind of assistantships may be very, very useful for you as well, because they will still provide all the benefits of other assistantships. So, where do you find the information about assistantships that are available in a particular department or university. Now, when you are researching or trying to create a list of the universities you might potentially apply to, when you get to the departmental web page, there should be a clear statement, stating that assistantships are available, to assist students or something on assistantship. And most of the time, they put it in a way to let you know that these are competitive positions. So look out for that explicit statement that states that assistantships are available. Now, if you do not see that explicit statement of assistantships, what you may do is maybe send a quick note to the graduate coordinator or any other point of contact listed on the departmental web page. And another thing you can do is frankly to move on, because if it's not stated, then they probably don't have that kind of funding to support you. But you may look out for other scholarships or fellowships that they might have. Maybe that would be helpful. But most of the time, the department will state that assistantships are available on the website. So look out for that statement when you are doing your research on a particular department or university. Now, for administrative assistantships, those are a little bit difficult to track, but I would say a good place to start is to look at the library's web page or divisions of the IT department. I don't know. Sometimes they do have some assistantship positions. So those are good places to start to look at vacancies for administrative assistantship. But for most students, they target getting a research or a teaching assistantship. So how do you get an assistantship position? Now I'll talk first about a research assistantship. Now sometimes the position may be advertised on the department's web page, or in some cases, some universities have, web pages for individual professors. So you might want to check that as well to see if there is any position announcement on the individual professor's web page. But frankly, most of the time, what happens is that these positions are given to students who are proactive. That means students who have, contacted the professor beforehand and had a little conversation about, the way the student can fit into the research program of that particular professor before, coming into the program. And sometimes some students will start their studies before trying to get, funding for their master's or PhD. The bottom line is you just need to contact professors if you are looking for a research assistantship. Now, I know I said you should contact professors, but I don't mean you should just contact them and ask, bluntly that you need funding. So that's not the way it works. So if you really want to be successful in the process, you need to have an understanding of the basic, things that a professor is looking for in a particular student. So with that understanding, then you can draft a cover letter, an effective cover letter that will captivate the professor and, make him or her want to know you more and know more of your qualities. So guys, take this very seriously. This is a big deal, okay? Because it is going to be the first look at your writing style. So if it doesn't fit with what is expected of a graduate student or a potential graduate student, then you would probably not get the opportunity to have further discussions with that particular professor. So the truth is, if you mess this particular cover letter up or cover email up, if you mess it up, you would probably not get the chance, to work with that particular professor. I've seen this happen many times where people just, put some things together and send it to a professor. Most of the times when you do that, you either get no reply or a negative reply. Now, sometimes you get a negative reply because the professor does not have funding at that particular time. So that happens. And when that happens, you just either wait till the professor is going to have a new grant, which is not advisable, or you move on to another professor or another university. So I used to tell my mentees that contacting professors or graduate programs is an art, and you need to understand the fine details to make your art really beautiful. So you really need to know how to market your qualities to fit into the thinking of a typical college professor. Now, to buttress my point, let me tell you a little story. So there was a colleague of mine who made inquiries about, funding for one of his friends at a business school, for an MBA program. And the professor he met was really excited about the prospect of, having someone come into the program. So he told that my colleague that, oh, no problem, no worries. Tell the guy to contact us. So eventually, when the guy contacted this professor, he just concocted something together and sent it to the professor. And the only thing he did was to copy, my colleague. And upon seeing the email, my colleague had to share that with me because it was just filled with a lot of, grammatical errors and, the flow of the sentences were just off. What happened after that was that the professor did not even bother to reply, despite showing enthusiasm in the first place about meeting this guy that we have talked about. So, like I said, you don't want to mess this up. Take it very seriously because it is a significant writing sample that will show your qualities to that particular professor. So, take it seriously. For more details on how to effectively craft a captivating cover email to a professor or graduate programs, you can check the link below for more explanation on that particular subject. Now, for teaching assistantships, these are mostly available to PhD students or mostly reserved for PhD students. And depending on the department's needs, it could also be made available to master students. So it just depends on the department, but mostly it is reserved for PhD students. In most programs, either you like it or not, as a PhD student, you need to have at least one semester of being a teaching assistant. Now, if you are an international student, the bar for becoming a teaching assistant is higher than if you are a domestic student. For international students, you may be required to have a very high score on your test of English as a foreign language, which we call TOEFL, or IELTS, which is a substitute for TOEFL, especially on the speaking sections. So, for example, in my alma mater, you need to score about 26 points out of 30 before you can be competitive for a teaching assistantship position. Now, if you don't meet that cutoff, some university gives you an opportunity to take an exam on campus before the semester starts. So if you can get into the country a little early before the semester starts and take that kind of exam, if you pass, then you may be competitive for those kind of positions. So it just depends on the university or the department and the criteria they have for students to become a teaching assistant. In any case, the graduate coordinator of that particular department is the best point of contact for any inquiries on, teaching assistantship positions. And if you cannot locate who the graduate coordinator is, they would definitely include a number or an email that you can contact for any inquiries about the program. So you should contact that particular email to make inquiries for, the possibility of getting a teaching assistantship position. Just so you know, in some cases, it is given as an automatic benefit if you are admitted for a PhD program. I've seen situations like that. So, like I said, it depends on the requirements or the criteria that the university or a particular department has. In other words, the teaching assistantship position comes through the department or the graduate coordinator, but the research assistantship position comes through individual professors. So that's a distinction that you should know. So for administrative assistantships, if you happen to find a vacancy somewhere, let's say on the library's webpage, all you need to really do is to respond to that call for applications, depending on the qualities they listed in the call for applications. So that is pretty much clearer than teaching assistantship or research assistantship positions where the qualities they need might not be really clear to you before coming into the program. And that is why I have created the guide in the description below. Now, before you even apply, I always advise that you try to contact either the graduate coordinator or a professor before you apply to any program. Now, I have seen situations where a student really wanted to work with a particular professor for his research, but could not get a position because the professor did not have the funds or the grants to, employ him as a research assistant. So the individual sent a very captivating email to the graduate coordinator, and because this guy is a good student, so the graduate coordinator, together with the head of department and others in the particular department, created some sort of administrative assistantship position for him, so that he can continue his studies pending the time that particular professor will have the funds to employ him as a research assistant. So I've seen situations like that. So it's very, very important that you introduce yourself to the department by sending a very good email, a captivating email like I call it, to the graduate coordinator or specific professors before you apply for your master's or PhD. So that's all I have for you today. In my next series of videos, I'm going to start talking about, the top funded universities in the United States. And I'm going to focus on those that get the most research support, because that is essentially what, universities use to support students for their master's or PhD research. So I'm going to start talking about those universities in my next series of videos. So if that sounds like something you would like to learn, please subscribe to the channel by clicking the red button below. And don't forget that you can also share this information with your friends. And also, I drop a lot of spontaneous knowledge on my Instagram page and also on my Facebook page. So if you want to get to access spontaneous tips that I might frankly not be able to post on YouTube, please follow those pages so that you can get those kind of tips. That's all I have for you today. I am Best Man, and I'll see you in the next video.